Today's lesson is 5, 9 similar figures, and we're going to be using proportions and everything we learned in the past chapters to figure out missing lengths and missing sides of certain shapes. So the first vocabulary word I have is similar. Okay, when we think of the word similar, we think the same. We think of close, they're very similar, they're very close to each other. But the definition today is the same shape, but not necessarily the same size. So here's an example I have on the side for you. I have a bigger triangle and a smaller triangle. These are similar, they have the same shape, but maybe not the same size. And they're usually always in proportion. If something is similar, we can assume it's in proportion. The symbol for similar is this little squiggly line that looks like this. Okay, and again, like I said, if you have something that's similar, the size is not the same, but the shape is always the same. And they're usually always in proportion. Okay. Okay, the other vocabulary word I have for you are corresponding parts. We seem to be getting into a little geometry here, but really it's only going to last about this section. So corresponding parts are angles and sides in the same position. So if I look up at these two shapes up here, I have a triangle ABC and I have a triangle DEF. What things are corresponding? So I'm going to just look at the, all right, so if I look at like angle A, what angle corresponds on the smaller triangle? Well, of course, angle D. And what corresponds with angle C on the other triangle? Well, angle F. And B corresponds with E. And a lot of times you can do this with your angles too. So like this could correspond with this. And then sometimes there'll be like two lines. This would also have two lines, tells them they correspond. This could have three. This could have three. So, I mean, we're getting into a little geometry, but just know how to find things that are corresponding. So the first thing they're going to have us do is we are just going to look at how to write triangles and how to write them in the correct order with the sides that they correspond to. So that's the thing, you have to make sure they're listed in order. So for example, if I label this as this top one, if I label it as triangle ABC, this means similar. Oops. This means similar. Okay. So it's saying it's similar to triangle DEF. And notice that the similar sides are listed first. There's A, there's D. Then we have B and E, they're listed in the same order, and C and F, they're listed in the same order. And when you make something similar, it has to be listed in the same order. Okay, so like this one over here is incorrect. Like if I look at B and D do not correspond on the picture. A and F don't correspond. So however you have the first one listed, the second one has to be listed in the same order so the sides correspond with what's ever listed in the first one. All right, so are these similar? This is the first thing they're going to have you do in your book is they're going to give you two shapes and they're going to ask if they're truly similar or not, meaning they might have the same shape but maybe not the same size. So we want to make sure they're in proportion with the same shape. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write proportion. Super simple. Look at your first picture. That first picture, I would put both of those things in the same side of the proportion. So I have 24 over 48. Okay, equals. Other side. Now the other side has to be listed like the same thing we did yesterday. If I listed the top short side first, then the short side has to go first in your proportion. Now 48 and 42 correspond because they're on the longer sides of the rectangle, so 42 goes here. Now you're going to see if it's in proportion by doing many of the ways that we talked about. You could use cross products, you could use division, you could use reducing. So let's see, if I do this one, I'm going to use cross products. I like that one the best. So 20 times 48, this would be 9. So if I do these two, it's 960. If I do 24 times 42, I get 1008. So these are not similar. They would be if they had the same cross products going on, and they are not. Okay, so here's another one, and this one, instead of seeing if it's in proportion, is finding the missing side. So again, I'm going to set up a proportion. The easiest thing to do is look at your first shape and set those numbers up in a proportion. So I have 30, this is my first shape, over x. Okay, so now I'm going to set up my other side. What number on shape B corresponds with 30? And it's 10. And 12 corresponds with the x. So this is how it would look. Now you're going to solve just like normal. 30 times 12 divided by 10. And you should get 36. So the missing side is 36. Okay, let's try another one. Look at these. These are two triangles, and they have two missing sides. So don't get too nervous, but you're going to have two answers for this. So the first thing I would do is I would look at my first shape. And I'd say, okay, if I look between these two shapes, I know that I always have my bottom is always there. Look at my 15 and my 5 are always there. But what else? So 15 is probably always going to have to be in my proportion because I have something that I can compare it to on the other side. So there's a lot of things I can do for this. I would suggest you just like take these two things and say, okay, I'm going to put those in a proportion, 21 over 15. Well, on this side, what does 21 correspond with? 21 corresponds with x, and then 15 corresponds with 5. Note, I'm always going to use 15 and 5 because there's something that I can compare in my proportion. All right, so I'm going to do the problem. Let's see. I'm going to do 21 times 5 divided by 15. And I know my x is going to be 7. So this is 7. Okay. So now I know in my other proportion, I have to have these two somehow, because if I want to know what y is, I have to compare it what it's being, what it's similar to on the other side, or what it's corresponding with on the other side. So I for sure have to have 18 and y. Well, or I guess I could write it like this. So I could do like 18 to 15 on one is equal y to 5. Okay, so somewhere I have to have 18 and y in there somehow because they have to be, that's how you can find y. The only way you can find y is by including the 18. So now I can do my cross products, 18 times 5 divided by 15. And this is going to be 6. And that's how you find. And we'll do some more examples. If you want to do, I can do another example for those. Okay, here's another one. If you want to try it by yourself, try it by yourself. You have to find A and you have to find B. So you're going to have two answers. You're going to have to set up two proportions, one to find A and one to find B. Now there's a lot of things you can do here. If you want to go ahead and try some, you can go ahead and try something. Now, the way I set mine up might be different than the way you set it up, but as long as you're using the same things and comparing the same things all the time, it shouldn't matter. Okay, I'm going to find A first. Okay, so I know that A corresponds with 10, so I can do A over 10. And then I have to find something that corresponds over from G to H. Well, I know B and 14 aren't going to work because I cannot have two letters in my proportion. But I know this can work. 9 to 18. Okay, so set your, you could do your division. I know it's most likely going to be 5 already. A is 5. Now if I look at B, okay, let's look at B again. I know I have to probably include B and 14 because that's the only way I can find what B is by comparing those sides. So I could do B over 14 equals, and I would probably stick with 9 and 18 because like I said, you can't have two variables in there. Okay, do your cross products. My guess is B is 7 if you do your cross products. Now you could easily set these up so many ways. You could have did 18, you could have did this way. It's going to turn out to be the same thing. You could have did it this way on the bottom. There's so many ways you can set up proportions as long as you're doing something consistent throughout the whole thing. All right, well, a few other things I want to talk about. If you have some shapes that look like this, let's say this is 9 and x, and let's say this is 15 and 10, I don't know, okay? Notice how you have to make sure you know what's corresponding here. Because if you, let's say you flip this over, so you flip this one, and you flip it around, it's going to look like this one over here. So if I would take it and I would totally give it a flip, it would look, let's call this A and let's call this B. If I would totally take A and I'd flip it like a page in a book, it's going to look like B. So you have to make sure that you're lining things up the way they should be lined up and what sides are corresponding. Because if I would add C, I could add other numbers around here and it could make it a little more confusing. So the first thing you must do when you're going to compare things, you have to know what sides you need to compare, because that is going to be the hardest part of this. One of the last ones I want to talk about is if you have a problem that looks like this. Okay, so I have a triangle. Okay, so I have a triangle inside of a triangle, and I want to find what x is. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is let's look at the big triangle. What are my dimensions of the big triangle? It's 12 and 20. Okay, now let's look at the little triangle. Okay, I know 12 and 9 correspond, and then x corresponds with 20. This is how you could set one up like this. And I know there's probably one in your homework like this today. So 9 times 20 divided by 12. So I know x would be 15. So make sure you get one like this in your notebook. Probably a good idea to use different colors too, like I kind of did, so you could see what you're comparing together here. So I hope you took good notes. If you have any questions, make sure you save them for me. The next time I see you, I'll probably go over a few more practice problems with you. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.